and welcome back to part two of Linear Random Does Crime. Um, go watch the first part if you haven't. Go watch it. It's great. It's funny. This is more serious. Anyway, back to Markeen.
And we're back. Okay, so that's the sound of Coke, by the way. Hashtag not sponsored.
Definitely not. We're not cool enough for that yet.
I see another name on your laptop. Antonio Luis Costa.
Yes, he's again not. I'm sure if I looked, I could find loads of information, but he's not one of the ones I want to focus on.
Oh.
So I'm just gonna give a brief description of what he did.
Okay, go ahead.
And because this is we're going into the serious part of the podcast now.
Yes, same.
We've done the funnies. I hope you enjoyed that.
Only serious people from here on out are allowed to listen. So everyone a member of our family, get off. Because they're all laughing at that get off as well.
Anyone who's been laughing throughout this entire podcast, leave now.
Leave now, yeah. You're not wanted for this part. Okay, so Antonio Luis Costa.
Antonio Luis Costa, he was an ex Genier, I think. Let me look it up just in case, because
That's like, what, the Garda? Or...
Guarda Nacional Republicana, which is basically
That's basically the police, right? For Portugal.
national. Okay, here we go. Translation perfect. National Republican Guard. And basically he was a soldier and a serial killer. From Santa Combadão. He was convicted in 2007 for the murders of 3 women between May 2005 and May 2006.
Sounds like a bad dude.
It doesn't sound very nice, no. His first victim was Isabel Cristina Isidoro. I don't know how much we should be talking about. I don't know how much.
If it's publicly available information, I think it's fine.
I guess. I'm not sure whether names are okay to be discussed or not, but anyway. It's too late now. We can make noises over the over the names if need be.
Yeah, true.
Her body was recovered from the ocean on May 31st, 2005. Then I think his next victim was Mariana Lourenço, who went missing in October 14th, 2005. And her mutilated body was found in June 2006.
Was she the first one found then?
No, the first one found was Isabel. And then Mariana was the second one. And then his third and last victim was Joana Oliveira, who went missing on May the 8th of 2006. And her body was recovered under a bridge based on directions given by Costa. I'm guessing he'd been caught by this point.
It says, I think, I read June 24th is the date apprehended.
So, yeah. So I guess he later let the police know where the
It's
where
probably
the
one of
body
those things
was.
where don't give me the death penalty or, like, give me a nicer sentence so I show you the body.
Yeah. According to Costa, after he had consensual sexual relations with the first victim and asked for a kiss from the second and third victims, he suffocated them when they threatened to tell. So
hang on.
So he had consensual sex.
Yeah.
And then
The thought of them
suffocated her.
telling anyone, he just...
I don't know. That doesn't make sense to me. Does it to you?
I mean, it could make sense if he was, like, ashamed of something
it sounds
that took
like
place.
a lie. It sounds like a lie. It sounds like he probably raped them.
Yes. And
then killed them.
Yeah. It sounds like a great way to
Who
get away
has
with rape.
consensual sex
Yeah.
And then, because I'm pretty sure rape is one of the worst crimes viewed in by other criminals. Rape and
Well, if you think about it from his perspective, that makes his story makes it impossible to dispute in a way, because you can say that he killed them, but it's really difficult to prove now that he raped them, because as far as
he
it
can
looked like
say
it's
he can
consensual.
say he can say it was consensual,
Yeah.
and then he killed them.
Yeah.
Which is why I think rape and paedophilia are two of the worst crimes viewed by other criminals, as viewed by everyone.
It could be he was trying to avoid like getting penalised in prison for that, or as well as avoid a harsher sentence.
Exactly, and yeah, so he said it was consensual when really that makes no sense whatsoever.
How often do you hear about serial killers and rapists who actually like have consensual sex and then do the killing afterwards? It just doesn't seem to happen.
But what I found interesting about this one, which is why I brought it up, because obviously, like, I don't think these guys need any more fame than what they already have.
Yep.
But the reason why I brought it up is are there a lot of people who have been arrested and convicted for rape who have said the sex was consensual?
Yes, I imagine a lot of people do that.
Like, but like, not in that sense, but you know what I mean? Like, they've been found guilty of murder, but then say
I don't
rape,
know about
the
that.
sex was consensual?
I imagine it must be, because it doesn't like vindicate you of the murder, but it stops you getting extra crime for rape. And in theory, there's only 2 people involved. But I think it'd be pretty hard to prove. I think it's a lot easier to prove, actually, because things like forensic science have moved on so much now. You can check the body and see if there's bruising and other stuff.
True.
So you would know. It's never going to be 100%, but you can get a fairly good idea if someone's committed rape.
True, but yeah, that was one that I thought was not only very sad and shocking, but also it just confused me as to why he would think that he could get away with that, especially because it makes no sense. Why would you kill someone that you've had consensual sex with?
It's a poor excuse anyway, but then most of these times these people are not mentally stable.
No, I suppose not. They're not
good.
thinking with sense, are they?
Yeah.
Obviously. But yeah, that was. I'm not going to go into any more detail
on that one.
Partly because don't want to give any more voice to that person. If anything, the victims should have a voice. But also because I'm lazy and I don't want to do any more research.
Well, I've got one last big topic that could be fairly long. Do you have any other smaller ones you want to go for?
I have a few other ones. I don't know whether they could be considered
small or large.
Small or large.
Each to their own. You know, it's not the size that matters about the serial killer. It's how you use it. Let's go through yours a bit more.
Oh, I was going to say let's go into yours and then we can come back to mine. But it's up to you. We can do mine first.
Let's do yours.
Okay. So there's a bit of controversy as to who was the last person who was the first person to be considered a serial killer in Portugal.
Okay.
There's several people that apparently have been given that name.
I think it's because in the past people used to be called like mass murderers. Like there's that French Duchess who killed children and stuff historically, and then there's also stories like nobles also being horrible murderers and sadists, but because they were nobles they could get away with it. So it's hard to like guess when the first serial killer started.
Yeah. So Francisco Matos Lobo. Was born in 1814. He was a bright young seminarian.
Was that like that's when he goes to church? It's a church thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like when you're an altar boy or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay.
He was a university-educated, well-spoken, handsome young man with his whole life ahead of him, apparently. according to this article. He was also having an affair with his aunt.
Okay. Stop the clock. Something's wrong. Nope. Was she like, I'm stuck? And he just is like, I'm going to make a genre of the internet.
Nephew, I'm stuck. Step nephew, I'm stuck. I'm not even sure if it was step nephew. I think it was just nephew.
I forgot how to cook pasta. Help.
Anyway.
Step nephew, I'm lost. This is your house.
My family is watching this, listening to this.
We're exposing some good stuff then.
Thank God no one can see my face.
That's what you think.
Over time, he became increasingly jealous at the thought of her being involved with other men, as you would.
As you would.
If you're someone's nephew.
We got a real Otto in the attic situation going on here. We'll get to that later.
Are we getting to that? Oh my God! Please, let's talk about that. Would it be okay to talk about that, considering we first heard of that in a podcast?
I'm going to do a summary of it. It would take far too long to go into all the details.
We'll do a summary, and should we mention the podcast that we heard it on? Should we do a sort of how cool would a collab be?
Oh, that'd be great. Absolutely.
Collaboration.
Yes,
Anyway,
I'll mention it after when I do the story. But yeah, carry on. Francisco Motos Lobo.
Sorry, I needed a drink.
That's right. He was having an affair and getting jealous.
He was having an affair with his aunt, and he was jealous. On July 25th, 1841, the young Francisco not only committed a heinous crime, but one that shocked the city of Lisbon. So again, I like that the website I'm reading from does a disclaimer, much like I do.
I don't know how true this is.
I don't know how accurate this is,
Yep.
but here we go. It's reported that he attacked his aunt, Adelaide, with a knife. He disemboweled her before turning his attention to her 18-year-old and 10-year-old children, his cousins. Then he also attacked the maid and then picked up their dog. Why always the dog? Leave the dog alone. Let the dog live. Why always the dog in serial killer movies? Anyway, and threw it out the first floor window.
Because the dog was humping his leg when they were trying to bang the aunt. That's almost always why.
But he killed the aunt.
Yeah, but he was trying to bang her before, and then the dog was humping his leg. He got frustrated. But hang on a second. I just want to throw out. He brutally kills his aunt and her children and a maid, but is like, this dog just gets thrown out a first floor window. Dog probably survived it.
Well, it doesn't say whether the dog survived.
The dog probably... Boomer lived, and Boomer hunted him down. This is like reverse John Wick here, where the dog comes after the guy who killed their owner, and is going to hunt him down.
The house explodes behind the dog as the dog is walking away.
Yeah.
If it was a cat, I would definitely say he survived.
You killed my owner and you took my food bowl.
He survived, and if it was a cat, I would totally say he survived, and he was the one that went to the police.
The cat orchestrated it all, actually.
He somehow communicated to the police.
It was me.
What had happened?
Yes.
But being a dog, I'm not sure if he survived first floor.
He'd be fine.
Anyway.
So that's from Portugal. It's like not that high up. Back in the 1800s, people forget we were all midgets back then. We were like 5 foot at the highest.
Anyway, so because of how rich, I guess, and handsome he was, people didn't believe the newspapers.
You're too beautiful to be a murderer.
When it came out, basically. When it came out that he'd done it,
yep.
No one believed it. It's the whole, but he's such a nice guy. He always seemed like such a quiet, nice person. Like, yeah, it's the quiet ones you gotta watch out for.
Sweet, misunderstood young man.
Oh, absolutely. At the age of 27, he was condemned to death by hanging. He denied being responsible for the murders up until his execution. It is documented that on the morning of his death, he barely ate and was almost faint when it was time to head to the gallows. He had to be tied to a chair during the journey as he could barely sit up. 2 priests took him to the gallows, but one of them was allegedly struck by a cerebral hemorrhage and dropped dead. This is like, by the way, I'm going to carry on. Like, the story should have finished when he was declared, like, when I was talking about how no one believed the newspapers. That should have been the end of the story. But the reason why I'm carrying on is because the day of his hanging is basically like the hanging from hell.
It's like a Faulty Tower sketch or something.
It's like, I'm pretty sure there's a fire that envelops the... You know the Lisbon fire?
Yeah.
The fire that took place in Lisbon? I'm pretty sure that was like... that was this day.
Because of this day.
One of them was allegedly struck by a cerebral hemorrhage and dropped dead. One of the 2 priests that carried him to the gallows was struck by a cerebral hemorrhage and dropped dead.
So this hanging already has a body count greater than 1.
Yep. Priest dead by cerebral hemorrhage. According to the newspapers, which described the execution as horrendous,
Oh boy.
Francisco took 4 hours to die.
Okay.
Because his neck had not been broken by the drop.
So we're just hanging there from the neck. Just like,
Not
hey,
done.
This is awkward.
Not done. The executioner... I mean, it's to be fair, I think it's been heard that a lot of people took a long time to die from...
Well, most people who died
That's
from
why
hanging...
beheading was considered a much more what's the word?
Well, the way I've understood it is hanging most of the time people die from it's the shut and stop when you hit the noose tightens and you do that thing. But the problem with that is it's also very messy because your bowels unleash and everything.
Yeah.
But beheading, on the other hand, is in a lot of ways it may be worse, but it doesn't have the mess. So
but
a
if
lot
it's
of times
by,
people are
what
talking
I
about
mean
it
is
being
like
more
if
humane.
it's by a good if it's by a good, well, not good, you know what I mean, like if it's by a professional executioner, supposedly it should be a lot quicker. But whereas hanging, no one has any control over it. Like, you can't really...
You see, in places in America and the UK, if you were hung and you didn't die by the snap, it was seen as a sign of God and you were let go.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It was like, God has chosen you not to die this day. Old circus act McGee. It's the 9th time this year.
How you keep getting away with murder, literally.
We've no idea.
Anyway, so the executioner tried to relieve Francisco's suffering by pushing on his shoulders, but he slipped, and to avoid falling off the scaffold, so the executioner, trying to help him out, slipped.
Like a fucking banana peel or something.
Slipped, and to avoid falling off the scaffold, grabbed the hanged man's legs. So this is now circus act bullshit.
Could you imagine if the executioner died as well?
I know.
And like he falls and breaks his neck, and then
when I was reading this for the first time, that's what I thought they were gonna say.
And then another executioner comes up and he goes, "Bill, are you what?" And then he strips on the banana peel again, and then he falls and dies, and it just like everyone just starts dying around this guy, and at some point they go, "All right, we're calling it off. Health and safety, it's out of control. We gotta stop. The kill count's too high."
So. Yeah, so he was hanging off the
guy's legs.
The guy's legs. Anyway, so turns out I was wrong. He's not famous for being... He's not considered the first serial killer. What he is considered is the alleged last person to be executed by hanging in Portugal.
I mean, autoerotic asphyxiation's a thing, so, you know, someone's probably done that in Portugal since then.
The other person to also be considered the last one to be executed by hanging in Portugal is Diogo Alves.
Okay.
We may have to split this into like alternate
alternate parts depending on how long this goes. Carry on.
Not just that, because I feel like I'm talking for like just.
I will be talking for a long time after this. I guarantee you.
Oh, that's okay then. Sorry, occasionally I will take a drink and I'll need you to vamp during those moments.
I'll make noises. I'll go.
I said vamp, not be disgusting.
Oh, okay. I'll get my arse away from the microphone then.
Anyway.
I'll just take a squat right over it, this then.
Gosh, I didn't think it would be this quick before our podcast turned to shit.
That's just because we're full of shit, hun.
But,
we're full of shit. Diego Alves.
Diogo Alves.
Oh.
No relation
No
to
relation.
me, as far as I know.
He was the wolf man all along.
Wrong side of my family.
Oh. He was the man wolf all along.
That's still wrong side of my family. My Alves is from my dad's side. The werewolf is from my mum's side.
It might actually be a relation, because hang on. Yeah, Alves was born in what? Galicia, and then came to Lisbon.
Yeah, what about it?
Your dad's from Lisbon.
Yes.
Anyway.
So he was looking for work.
Okay.
In the capital.
Yes.
And he realised that a life of crime would be far more profitable with less work involved.
Why is it always people think crime is always the better way of paying? You do basic math. It's better to be a politician than it is to be a criminal. At least that is legal.
Well, if you're good at it.
Well, even if you're not good at it, like.
I mean, if you manage to succeed, if you manage to get there, is what I mean.
You basically need to be Moriarty to succeed in a world of crime properly. That's the dream. Be Moriarty, and not have a Sherlock Holmes.
That is a dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, I was gonna say, you do have to work hard to become a politician, but Trump doesn't help my point, does
With
he?
a small loan of $2 million.
You just need to have money to be a politician. Well, that's the problem, is that they don't have money. They need money to be a politician to make money.
Most people become criminals because they don't have another option available to them. So I suspect the article is kind of reading into it a bit much. Because most people just don't go like, I guess being a criminal is an easy way to make money. It's more like, I guess I'll be a criminal because I can't afford food. Or
a criminal is just trying to act tough by saying, I chose this because
I didn't choose.
It's the easiest way to do it.
I'm thinking of Twister now, and that scene with the guy who's the rival in Twister.
Yeah.
And it's like, that guy, he's not in it for the crime, he's in it for the money.
Oh, yeah.
Not us. We're adventurers. We're here for the crime. Be the legend.
He's in it for the money, not the science.
It's not about the money. It's about sending a message.
He's in it for the money, not the crime.
Lisbon needs a better class of criminal.
Anyway.
And I'm going to give it to him.
Anyway, seriously, we're going to have to cut this into 2 different podcasts. You do realise this.
Carry on.
Proceeding. It's good because then we'll have some spare ones.
Maybe.
We won't have to record for a while. From 18... Am I killing the magic, by the way?
You're interrupting it. Go on. I'm dying to know what happens next, like his victims were, probably.
Well, you know of his story. We've spoken about him before.
I do.
I think this is one of the few ones we've actually spoken about before.
Okay.
Actually, I think you told me about him first.
I did?
Yeah. But anyway... from 1836 to 1839, he took to stalking the Aqueduct of Free Waters. Aqueduct das Águas Livres.
Yes.
Looking to make some easy money. The aqueduct is some 213 feet above the city.
It's still there, isn't it, actually? You can see it.
I'm pretty sure it's still there, yes. It's a big monument.
It's a big part of Lisbon.
Yeah. And spans the Alcântara Valley. It allowed both water and suburbanites to make their way into the city.
Okay.
So basically, anyone that needed to go into the city for whatever,
they would walk along the aqueduct.
they would walk along there, and it also transported the water into the city.
Yeah.
Diogo would wait in the aqueduct for farmers and others from outside the city who had come to sell their wares.
Mm-hmm.
He would then approach them as they were commuting back home, having presumably made money from their sales. Clever. Don't rob them on the way there because they won't have any money.
He
rob them on the way
exploited.
back.
He exploiting the system. You know.
Diogo would rob them before throwing them off the aqueduct and basically made it look like suicide, which would then go uninvestigated.
And everyone would assume it's suicide as well because they're penniless, which means that obviously they had a bad day at the market.
Yeah.
And they've just committed suicide. It's the perfect crime.
Throw them off, rob them, throw them off the aqueduct, making it look like suicide. No one's going to investigate it because it just looks like suicide.
Yep.
Why would you investigate a simple case of suicide? Obviously, one turned into too many. So eventually it sort of looked a bit strange.
These people, a lot of depressed people at the same time. It's very odd. We need to put something up here. Try and stop this. It's out of control.
As you were saying, because the country was going through a political and economical crisis, it was just assumed that they were just poor farmers
That had enough.
that hadn't had much luck.
Yeah.
And decided to take their own lives. It is believed he killed over 70 people in this manner throughout
That's a hell of a kill count.
throughout the span of 3 years.
That's quite a lot.
Eventually, someone became concerned due to all the suicides happening. So in 1837, the aqueduct was closed and remained so for many decades to follow. So now, Diogo had to look for a new way to make a living.
God damn it. I had a good thing going. I got too greedy.
He did well for a while there, though.
Yeah.
He formed a gang to break into people's houses, rob and kill families.
He escalated far too quickly.
Basically, in 1840, he was finally caught by the authorities and was sentenced to the death penalty. In February 19th.
Please tell me he was thrown off an aqueduct.
1841, he was executed by hanging.
Oh, he should have been thrown off the aqueduct.
He was basically considered Portugal's first serial killer. Whether he was or not, that's...
Wow.
That's not really accurate.
That's crazy. That's a hell of a serial killer to start. Because I think for the UK... So we've had highwaymen, but like they were pretty outright mercenaries. I don't think most people, or robbers, no one really would consider them serial killers. There is funny enough a place in the UK called the Devil's Punch Bowl, where I think it's between Oxfordshire and London, and it's this valley which kind of looks like a punch bowl, and it was notorious for highwaymen to be there, and they would rob people go by, and they would also there was basically the bad ones who would murder people. But I don't think we've had anyone who was like out and out like a serial killer like that. I think the first proper recorded case of a serial killer in the UK would be Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, over
He
70
popularised
people.
the term.
Over 70 people, and that's not counting the people that the families he killed.
Quite possibly, he may have killed even more, and we just don't know.
With a subsequent gang. But that is false, because he actually wasn't the first serial killer in Portugal.
He wasn't?
That title might fall, who knows, maybe before that even there was someone else. But according to this article...
well, before you go on to that, I feel like it's time to give you a break for me to come in with my serial killer. I've got to up you. We're playing serial killer trumps now. I need to up yours.
Alright, go on then.
So this I think usually this might be once again a splurging too early, but I feel like potentially the way to talk about. I thought one way would be interesting would be to go for the most prolific serial killer in British history, and it's not Jack the Ripper. So most people start any sort of crime documentaries about serial killers in the UK. They talk about Jack the Ripper.
Of course.
I'm not going to do that. I'm going in reverse order, essentially.
Reverse.
I'm going in reverse order. I'm starting with Harold Shipman. Have you heard of Harold Shipman?
I have heard the name, yes.
Some have called him the Angel of Death, Dr. Death, Dr. Misery. He's a very bad man, and I'm going to go and explain a little bit about his history and what he did to earn such infamous title and recognition. So, Harold Shipman, born in Nottingham, he was the middle child of three. He was brought up by his parents, who were devout Methodists. Methodists are a branch of the Church of England, which are deeply traditionalist. They don't believe in the preaching from priests, or especially not the Pope, because the Church of England doesn't follow it, or any other figure. Instead, the Methodists don't. Instead, they follow the teachings of a guy called, I think, Jonathan Wexley. And his belief was that the Church of England would be better served focusing not on people and what they're saying, but on what was written down. And his parents were devout believers of this. This would come into play later when his mother would get cancer. He excelled in rugby and long distance running. He was quite an athlete, considered quite well liked by everyone around him, though quiet and unassuming at times. At the age of 17, his mother died of cancer. Her treatment was very similar to what would become his modus operandi, of morphine administered by a doctor. She would take it to numb the pain, but due to I'm trying to find proof of what was mentioned in the article, but due to her medical beliefs, in theory, her religious beliefs, she wouldn't volunteer for cancer treatment. So instead, she had a long and difficult and painful battle with cancer before passing away. A couple of years later, he married his wife. Met his wife. Had 4 children over his marriage with her. From what I can tell, he seems to have been a good husband and a good father. In 1970, he went to Leeds School of Medicine. Went there for 4 years. Upon leaving, he was already booked for a practice in 1974. Following his first year at this practice, it was found that he had been forging prescriptions of pethidine, or what is more commonly known as Demerol, which is an opioid. No one is sure to this day exactly as to whether or not it was for his own use. That said, he was forced to undergo rehab and was fined £600. So, just to give you an idea, back in the day, it seemed like doctors were a lot more able to get a lot away with a lot worse than what you'd kind of suspect. He wasn't penalised beyond £600 and having to go rehab. His license was still kept. He didn't have to go under any extra training, and he was still allowed to operate as a GP, as a doctor at a GP. He continued to work in a GP until 1993, during which time he left to set up his own surgery. He was a respected physician in the UK, even appearing on television. His most famous appearance was in 1989 with Tonight with Trevor McDonald, where he talked about mental health and the barriers to which people can find or have struggled to get mental health.
Irony.
Irony indeed. Concerns were first raised about him in 1988 by a Dr. Linda Reynolds to the South Manchester coroner. She was concerned due to the high death rate and large number of cremations that seemed to be coming from his patients. So it's one thing for there to be a high death rate, that's bad, but the thing is, before Shipman, there was really no statistical analysis in place to track sort of long-standing issues like this.
Mm-hmm.
In theory, if there had been, they would have predicted by the time he got to the first quarter of people he'd killed, they would have found out and been able to stop him. But instead there wasn't. The other part was the cremations. It's not unusual for cremations to be a thing, but wasn't unusual was that nearly all his patients who died seemed to express will for cremations, which was a bit odd. So she raised concerns, and the coroner spoke to the police, and an investigation was launched, but the police couldn't find anything conclusive. Their failure to find anything at the time would later be blamed on the inexperience of the officers who were charged with the investigation. Following the investigation, he would go on to kill 3 more people. August that same year, a taxi driver called John Shaw reported Shipman. He suspected that Shipman had killed 21 people. Over several years, Shaw had taken many elderly patients that had expressed that they were Shipman's patients to a hospital and became suspicious of how so many healthy people, even if they were old, died so suddenly in his care. He reported one example of a young man who was 41 years of age, okay, maybe middle-aged man, who came in with apparently with a dicky knee, as he put it, and apparently had died of a heart attack the following week. Shipman's last victim, Kathleen Grundy, was found dead 24th of June 1998. He was the last person alive to see her. Last person to see her alive. He signed her death certificate and recorded the death as old age. Kathleen's daughter became suspicious when she learned that a new will had been produced and handed in to the solicitor. The will had dictated that nothing was to be left to her or her siblings, of which there were 4 others, but £380,000 plus was left to Harold Shipman. The daughter was encouraged by a solicitor to go to the police and did that same year. The body was exhumed and traces of diamorphine was found. Diamorphine is most commonly known as, the colloquial term for it is medical heroin. It's used as an opioid for people who are suffering from pain. Shipman, in response to this, claimed that she had been a drug addict, and his medical files documented this. This, of course, raised concerns. Mm-hmm. Why was this not presented sooner? Why did he say it was old age when there was traces of this found? Also, this was medical heroin. How was she able to procure this? Police forensics on further investigation, however, identified that the files had been updated to document her drug use after her death. Following this discovery, Shipman was arrested 7th September 1998. His house was investigated and searched after his arrest, and what was found was a Brothers typewriter. Brothers typewriters, for those who aren't aware, are very special typewriters that for a long period of time were used in the dictating of wills. These days, there's a lot of different regulations in place, and I think most of it's digital now, but it was a very special typewriter with a special set of ink and characters that would make it unique and very easy to identify as a will. So it's believed that he used this will, he wrote on this typewriter the will that Kathleen's will, which would dictate the money be left to him. It is unknown why he chose to push his luck with this last victim. To our knowledge, he had never tried to get the will changed for anyone else. Usually his modus operandi was that he would almost always make sure he wasn't the last person to see someone alive.
He just got too cocky, didn't he?
So the theories are the following. On some level, he felt guilty about what he was doing and wanted to be caught. On another level, he felt his life was out of control and he needed money to cover possible debts. There was rumours there was potentially a lot of gambling debts going on behind the scene, and his financials weren't in as good order as everyone was led to believe. And lastly, the one which people consider the most likely, apparently he was quite vocal with his intentions of retiring early at the age of 55, which I think he was about a year away from when he was originally arrested. It had always been a dream of his apparently to retire early, and he was planning on leaving the country as soon as he could.
He got too cocky and saw that as his ticket.
Yep.
Okay.
Follow-up investigations would find 50 victims of his. Further follow-up investigations would find more, leading into the 100, 150, and then over 200 victims. His youngest known victim was 41, but many suspect that some that cannot have been proven as his due to cremation or lack of evidence. Many suspect that his youngest victim may have been as young as 4.
Jesus Christ.
In total, Harold Shipman killed 250 people, with dozens more suspected. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, Following 15 murder convictions and one forgery of a will. Interesting enough, the it was almost a rush job to get him convicted. One of Labour's big manifestos at the time was to do away with life imprisonment. So life imprisonment these days means a series of years up to 25 years.
Mm.
Back in the day, before Labour government changed it, as per my manifesto, it was total life imprisonment. Life imprisonment meant life imprisonment, and he would be there for the rest of his life. About 4 months before that changed, they pushed through for his court so that he could be convicted and have to serve out that term.
Right.
He did appeal several times, but nothing came to be of it. 3 years into his sentence, he was found hung to death in his cell, having committed suicide. There is a lot of criticism of the prison system as to how they were able to let him commit suicide. For all intents and purposes, apparently while he was inside, he was a well-functioning prisoner. He did make friends with, unfortunately, several other serial killers, which I don't know why that didn't ring any alarm bells for anyone. Apparently he would write frequently to them. Following his death, he was cremated. The exact date of the cremation and who attended was kept a secret, but many suspect it was just his wife and his children. No other serial killer in the UK has killed as many people. It's a number that almost beggars belief. 250.
Yeah.
Like, you try to think about it. You think about 1 or 2 people, or 3. That's most serial killers only get as far as 3, if that. But then you think about this guy who, from a position of power and lack of regulation and authority, because people trust doctors. They do.
Yeah, of course they do.
Especially in the UK, we have a big, long-standing trust of our doctors up until things like the Wakefield report about autism and that stuff that happened around the same time as this, actually. So maybe that's a good reason as to why there was a big anti-vax there at the time. He just was able to abuse his position for so long. In theory, from as early as 1970 to 1998, he was killing people without any sort of oversight or any indication. Some good news, though. Following his arrest and subsequent investigations, the shipment effect was created. It was a massive restructuring, redesigning of all rules around medical care and treatments in the country, including wills. It was to ensure that this could never happen again. He is also credited as the only proven murderer doctor in British history. Before him, no other doctor had been proven to be a murderer. When I say murderer doctor who murdered his patients. Mm. There was one previous doctor who apparently murdered 70 people, but they weren't his patients specifically. Apparently this guy was a poisoner. He ran around poisoning people in his spare time, not while they were under his duty of care. So yeah, that is Harold Shipman. There are some great articles and stories to it. I may even bring him up again for a solo podcast at some point. There's a massive amount to cover here. But yeah, the thing that really gets a lot of people is why he did it. Because you would think, having seen his mum in like so much pain and like misery for as long as she did, you would think he would know better than to try and force pain and misery onto others. But he was taking people who were perfectly healthy, nothing wrong with them, and he was murdering them.
Yeah.
I think maybe that's also a big reason as to why things like the conversation around like assisted suicide is such a touchy topic in the UK, because we had a man going around as a doctor using his authority to murder people on a level that is outside of war crimes. Is almost unheard of. But yeah, that is Harold Shipman.
I mean, we could also go into nurses that have
killed their patients,
taken their duty of care and
They've,
usurped it.
In a weird way, those are easier to identify, apparently, because angels of deaths are a lot more psychologically profiled. and all the warning signs are more easily there. Apparently, doctors, especially male doctors, it's harder because there's the things that make them look out, like, okay, this person's a killer. That sort of thing is harder to track, identify. Because by all accounts, aside from his mum passing away when he was young, there's no real origin as to why he started doing the things that he did. Just that he wanted to. And that's it. That was Harold Shipman. I thought it was worth bringing up as well because everyone talks about Jack the Ripper, and everyone talks about the Yorkshire Ripper, but very few people I seem to talk about much about potentially the greatest serial killer. I say greatest, I mean it in the worst possible way. Serial killer of all time in the UK.
I think the big thing about Jack the Ripper is that he went unidentified.
It was the mystery surrounding him.
Exactly. Despite the fact that, by comparison, obviously, his crimes were not as large as Harold Shipman's, evidently. Certainly by numbers.
Yes. But he captured the public's attention as well. He played with the police and the reporters, and it was captured not just in the UK.
And obviously the mystery of who... Like, he somehow managed to slip away unidentified.
Well, I'm a big fan of the popular theory that he committed suicide. That...
You don't think he went to the US?
No.
apparently there were some crimes, some murders happened in the US.
Yep.
That made people think that it was him.
True. I remember hearing about it. The way I look at it is, from what I've seen, the crimes that happened in the US, from what I've heard, the crimes that happened in the US were like so spread out from when he originally was killing people in London. That it wouldn't make sense for a killer who was, if anything, he was ramping up to kill even more people. So it would make more sense that something happened to him that made him stop. And the theory, and part of the reason around it is that I think now it's commonly said that they think he was a butcher. One of the people who committed suicide was a butcher. They think he was from a Eastern European background. Same butcher was also Eastern European. But it's forever a mystery, and the mystery is what attracts people to the legend. And the fact that mass media picked up on it across the world. And
let's face it, one of the suspects was the Queen's physician.
Yes.
I mean, who doesn't want a juicy gossip?
Exactly.
About
the Queen being killing people.
A murderer amongst the Queen's closest...
Can I just throw out here and say, From Hell is a great movie. Go watch it, alright? It's great. It's classic cheese. I love it. And it's about that whole thing about how, what if the royal physician was the murderer? Because the prince at the time had a baby and got syphilis, and that's how syphilis spread from Victoria's family to the rest of the royal households of Europe.
I mean, it makes total sense. It also makes sense that Johnny Depp does opioids.
That's
anyway.
True. But Johnny Depp didn't get the clap.
Anyway, it's interesting that you bring up people in a position of some sort of authority, because that is a perfect segue to the person who was actually the first serial killer in Portugal.
Oh my goodness.
Who was actually a woman.
Are we going to end our segment with a female serial killer?
No, because I have one after one last one after that.
Okay, go on. Let's hear.
Her name is Luisa de Jesus, or was.
I'm liking it already. I can't pronounce it.
She was 22 years old. She adopted babies from a foundling wheel.
What's a foundling wheel?
So a foundling wheel is in churches,
okay.
So that women didn't kill their babies.
Like unwanted babies and stuff.
If they didn't want a baby, they could dispose of it by leaving it. It was like a cylinder. It actually describes it. Foundling wheel was a cylinder set upright in the outside wall of the building, like a revolving door.
Like a hang on.
So they would put their baby, and then the people inside the house
Would
or
take
the
the
church
baby.
or whatever would
So-
revolve the door and then take the baby.
Hold up. So like a rotisserie. A rotisserie
Something
thing.
like
You
that.
put the baby on it and you just rotate, and it's like, then the adopting parents would come along and they go, I don't want that one. I rotated some more. Give me this one. I like that baby.
No, not like that.
That baby's got 4 hangers, like me.
No, the parent could drop the baby off, and the
And it
people
would
that
be-
lived in the house, like
Yeah.
in a church.
I
or
just like the idea of people saving babies like pick and mix.
No. Anyway, they were mostly found in churches.
Yeah.
So, so parents who didn't want their children, their babies,
Yeah.
or mothers more accurately, would drop the baby off and then leave, and that way there were a lot less mothers
Infanticide,
killing their
essentially.
babies.
Yeah.
Ironic because of what I'm
Someone's
about to
going
tell
to
you.
abuse this system.
So mother's unable to. Give me a second.
This is already sounding very similar
You
to.
can cut this off.
No, because I'm talking about something important now. It sounds really similar to. There existed in the UK. It was. I want to say this is more in Ireland than it was in the UK, but I'm pretty sure it happened in Scotland and in some parts of England as well. There were churches. So what would happen is, if your daughter became pregnant, obviously it's an embarrassment for the family if she's not married. So they would send her off to the abbey, and she would give birth. She'd disappear for 9 months, give birth, be back as if nothing had ever happened.
Mm-hmm.
During this time, they would treat the women who were sent up there were pretty much traumatized by the nuns and priests of the place. They were just awful, awful people to them, and it was kind of a mystery as to what happened to the babies. Now, the rumor was that the children would always be adopted. Unfortunately, especially over the last 20 or 30 years, more and more cases came out where it turns out what happened to the babies was far worse than just being taken away and adopted. There were baby mass graves where the babies were just dumped and buried alive in some cases, was bashed in, and hundreds of children potentially, all happening right under the wings of the Catholic and Protestant churches, because they just didn't want to deal with them. There's no point, they're not wanted by their mums, and we can't find people to adopt them, and we can't bother feeding them, so that's it, hundreds of babies. Mass graves for them as well. It's absolutely crazy, and it's shocking to me that this stuff still, have your faith by all means, but this sort of news should shake your faith, absolutely. At least very much your faith in the people who are running it, because it's disgusting.
And who use religion, hide behind religion in order to do things, despicable things. Certainly,
it's unbelievable.
But yeah, so they would drop the babies off and ring a bell, to alert the people in the church
that there was a baby in the
baby
thing.
there.
Don't leave it too long in the rotisserie.
In the rotisserie, in the wheel.
In the wheel.
Yes. Apparently, it was common in medieval times. I don't know whether that's true or not. Yeah, as you said, they were used to prevent infanticide. Infanticide. By adopting a baby from the wheel, Louisa would pocket 600 reis at the time.
Oh no, they paid people to adopt babies.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it still kind of happens now. It's called fostering, but there's a lot of abuse in fostering systems. So
Exactly.
I want to see how. I can already start imagining how badly this is going to go.
600 reis. I'm not sure how it translates to now money, but I'm guessing it was good.
If it's anything, it'll probably be something
money.
like 60 grand. That's how stupid inflation will get over time.
I'm not sure, but
It's a lot of money.
I'm guessing
probably.
it's good money.
Yeah.
So each time she adopted a baby, she would earn money. And a cubit of beta. whatever that is.
What is like?
66 centimeters of woolen cloth. Bless you.
Thank you.
Oh no, the COVID.
Ah.
Anyway, so in total she collected about 20,000 reis.
Okay, I need to get the calculator up. Hang on.
I'll pause.
Actually, hold up. So 20. Okay, everyone hear me do math. Okay.
So 600 per baby.
It's easier than so 20 divided by 6 is 12, 18, 3 points. I want to say it's 3.25. Yeah, 3.25. 3.25 times 1,000.
2 times 600 is 12,000. That's 2 babies.
Oh yeah, because it's the 1,000 ratio. Sorry, I'm being an idiot. Okay, then yeah, it was several babies.
So it was roughly three to four babies.
I'm losing my mind. Yes, 3 to 4 babies.
3 to 4 babies.
It's 3.25 babies.
Which was the equivalent of 6 months' wages of a cook, or 1 year's wages for a kitchen girl at the hospital.
No, so it wasn't
Hospital Real das Caldas.
it wasn't like massive amounts of money, but it was still fairly good money for the poor. If you're a poor person, this is good money.
Yeah. It was on the morning of April 1st of 1772.
Yep.
That Louise's macabre get-rich-quick scheme began to unravel.
Uh-oh.
Angelica Maria, a member of the Roda staff, of the wheel staff, discovered among the olive trees nearby the corpse of a child still with a strip of cloth used to strangle it.
Oh no.
Around its neck. The dead child was recognised as one Luisa de Jesus had adopted.
Oh, that's a hell of a name. She's really not going to get a lot of favour from the Catholics for doing that.
Under the olive trees, 14 more were discovered.
14?
14 more were
That's
discovered.
14
babies.
Oh my lord.
A judge ordered a search of Louise's house. Several decaying body parts were found in a clay pot. The only way to ascertain the number of victims in the pot was the presence of 3 skulls inside. Under some straw, 4 more skulls were found, along with another decaying body. Over the next few days, the investigators found 10 skulls of innocent heads without the slightest trace of any other bone. Louisa confessed to asphyxiating 28 children, but investigators found 33 bodies of the 34 that records showed she adopted.
Christ.
So she was recorded to have adopted 34, but only 33 were found.
Oh my lord.
There are reports that she was condemned to walk the Lisbon streets with a preacher and a noose around her neck on her way to the gallows. Once there, it is believed that she was burned with red-hot tongs, whipped, had her hands cut off, and garroted, and finally hanged.
I think it's pronounced garroted.
Garroted, whatever.
Yeah.
Her body was then cremated. The sentencing order said this was done so that there will never be a memory of such a monster again.
Wow. First of all, optimistic. Second of all, I mean, I personally don't believe in the death penalty, but they're making a strong case for it here, I gotta say. Strong case. What was that I saw about the heads being in jars?
So, I'll show you the picture. I'm not sure if it's on this article.
Am I going to have to find the picture and put it on the video so that people can see?
You can do.
Well, it's for the podcast. It's not going to be great if I'm like, oh, we're just going to watch this for a minute. All right, everyone else, just hold up. We're just going to look at this for a moment.
Okay, we'll put it up now, so we'll be able to see it now. Diogo Alves was executed in 1841, as I mentioned previously in this podcast. And although today we recognise phrenology, which was developed by German physician Franz Joseph Gall in the 1700s as a pseudoscience, back then its premises were simple and its conclusions seemed revolutionary.
Famously, a starting point for eugenics.
They understood the brain housed all aspects of an individual's personality in distinct areas. Therefore, it was believed the shape of a skull could be felt and measured to gain insight into someone's personality. It is no surprise then that notorious killers would draw the attention of Portugal's phrenologists, who requested Diogo and Francisco's heads, and they wanted to study their skulls in depth.
But they're still in the museum today.
And they are still, let me see, because it says where they are.
I think you just missed it. Anyway, these heads look minging, guys. That's all I'm going to say right here.
It doesn't actually say.
Maybe they're still there. They're just maybe it doesn't say explicitly where they are.
It says I read an article that does say it, but I'll look it up in a minute. But
that's crazy, yo. We got some crazy serial
there's
killers.
little evidence that a study actually took place of their skulls.
Oh yeah.
But they're still Diogo's skull is still preserved in a jar intact, and that's what it looks like.
Minging.
And Francisco Matos Lobo was dissected and examined by phrenologists in April 1842, and his skull is located just 2 doors down from Alves's.
That's crazy.
In a glass case full of patinate skulls.
Alright. Do you have one more you want to show us?
I do have one more I want to talk about. Let me just have a look, because now I'm curious. Because it did say...
Would any of you be interested in us doing video games? Me and I just played for Resident Evil 8, and it was great. Really, really good game. But I can try and find more spooky games for us to play if you'll be interested in me and I just screaming a lot. Yeah, we can do this.
That's pretty much all I do during that.
We're better game players than Markiplier and Jacksepticeye. So, get on there. We'll do it. Back to Anna.
How dare you? I love Markiplier. Well, I love watching him play.
I'm sure you did. You want to tell me something else?
No offense, Markiplier.
Okay.
So they're kept at the Anatomical Theatre at the University of Lisbon's Faculty of Medicine.
Ah. So probably not opened up to the public entirely, but you asked and you pay a bit of money, you can get to see their head. You can get some head. I find if you spend a lot of money, actually, you get some head.
But
just
yeah, that's what it looks like. That is creepy. Like that gives me the chills.
Could you imagine being a medical student?
Because you can actually see his face is so clear.
Yeah, it's not just his skull. His face is his whole head.
Yeah, with Francisco, it's just his skull.
Yeah.
Like you can just see his skull. But this guy, his head has been preserved. But preserved.
Could you imagine being a medical student on your first day, and then the executioner, you trip and you push your hand out and you knock the jar off the table.
No, you don't.
And you go, no. And then your professor goes in and goes, we have ways of dealing with this. We're going to put your head in the jar. Why do you think it was so preserved?
Yeah.
We just keep taking the heads of the people who knocked it off.
This isn't actually Diogo at all.
This was Larry.
This is actually quite
Larry ate my sandwich.
This gives me the chills because you can actually see his face.
You don't know eyes though. All right.
You can see his eyes.
Are we signing off?
No, not yet. Sorry. I have.
We got 5 minutes to the end of the podcast.
No, we don't.
We're already at 2 hours.
Yeah, I know. We'll cut it in half.
That's still an hour.
It's okay. We have the Lisbon Ripper, because apparently every country has to have one.
All right, go on.
So,
It was too good the first time. You have to come back for seconds.
absolutely. He murdered 3 prostitutes in Lisbon between 1992 and 1993. I was just a baby.
Yeah, the shit ripper in comparison.
I was just a baby.
You were just a baby. I was 1992, 1993. Oh.
Yeah.
How
I was 1 and then 2.
You're like little baby you. You probably caught him.
I totally caught him.
You were sitting on your balcony. You went goo, and he went what? And then he got arrested.
Gaia. No, I don't think. I think that's why he's. That might be why. I'm not sure he was caught.
Oh. Well, that's interesting.
I think that might be why he might be considered the Lisbon
The
Ripper.
Lisbon Ripper. But once again, it's very weird because if you're usually the sort of
Because
Ripper
they don't
killer,
say a name.
you
I'm
don't.
sure they would say a name if he'd been caught.
Yeah, but you don't. If you're like a killer like in the same way as Jack the Ripper, you're a sort of killer that always ramps up. So if it's just a stop, it means that something happened to you.
Something must have happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so his first victim was 22-year-old Maria Valentina, nicknamed Tina, who frequented the area around Avenidas Novas.
Mm-hmm.
She was found on July 31st, 1992. I would have been 1 by then.
Yep.
In a large cabin in Povo de Santo Adrião.
Your mum's gonna get so mad at you
Try
when you're
saying that
pronouncing
5
stuff.
times fast. Povo de Santo Adrião. There we go.
Otto Santo Dião.
Yeah, that's the one. Lying in a pool of her own blood. She had been strangled, disemboweled, and some of her internal organs had been removed.
Ah, real Ripper, like. Okay.
Yeah. The second victim, 24-year-old Maria Fernanda, was found on January 27, 1993, in a large cabin in Entrecampos,
Okay.
by railway construction workers who were working at a nearby railway bridge. She was also disemboweled and some internal organs had been removed.
Very creepy.
The third and last victim was 27-year-old Maria João, a resident of the Santo António dos Cavaleiros ghetto, who lived alone. She was found on March 15th, 1993, near the location of the first victim, of whom she was a friend.
Interesting.
Like the previous victim, she was disemboweled, but this time almost all her organs were removed.
It's kind of like I'm starting to see lots of parallels to that because his last victim was also friends with one of his previous victims, and it was way more brutal, and the disembowelment was way more extensive.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So it's a lot. I think he bears the name a lot better than the Yorkshire Ripper did.
The Yorkshire Ripper was a very different type of serial killer.
Yeah.
I agree. But yeah, no, I see the similarities.
He only had 3 victims, unlike the Ripper, who I think had 5.
He had 5.
All the victims were young brunettes named Maria, allegedly prostitutes and drug addicts, and were disemboweled with a sharp object that was not a knife, possibly a scalpel.
Which would give credence to the theory that he was a doctor or something like the original Jack the Ripper was.
Something like that, yes. It doesn't say anything about him being found.
Wow. I guess we've got to be careful next time we're in Lisbon. He could still be out there.
I think he'd be very
old now.
very old at this point.
There
Depending
is-
on how old he was back then, who knows?
There was a show called Dexter about a serial killer who hunts and kills other serial killers. And there's an episode in it where he tracks down this like legendary serial killer, and it's just an old guy who's incontinent and living in a retirement home. And it turns out that like he had a car accident on his way back after killing his last victim, and it just broke. His back got broke, and now he can't walk anymore, and that's why he stopped. And like his whole thing is that he's like super miserable that he can't kill anyone anymore, and he's like begging Dexter to kill him, and Dexter's like, "This is real weird, man. I'm not used to this." But yeah, no, that's crazy.
I'm trying to see if there's any other details, but
in case you hadn't noticed, this is a 2-hour long podcast currently. We're doing this in at least one 2-hour long section, and we may cut this up later.
we're gonna cut it up in half.
We're just gonna make everyone watch the whole thing.
No.
All one sit-in, the whole thing.
We'll have to be continued. You can cut and paste this at the wherever you want to cut off from the last
No,
one.
they need to listen for us.
Come
Crumble
on,
on for 2 hours.
Just cut it in half. Then we don't have to. We can be lazy and we don't have to like.
I've been Markeen from Linear Random.
I've been Anna.
And we are
Linear Random.
Bye.
Bit of the end before
Go,
the
go,
before
talk. She's found something else she wants to talk about. We're back. You never left. Let's go.
So as it turns out, on November 30th, 2011, 19 years after the murders, one suspect, José Pedro Guedes, aged 46, had his name put forward by his son Joel, aged 21, who had applied to... So there's a program in Portugal, kind of like Big Brother, named Secret Story.
Okay.
And it basically happens... Like, I wish I'd remembered this, because I would have told this story very differently.
I've got a unique story. I'm a serial killer.
No, but this guy... So what happens is they go into the secret program, and they each have a secret that no one else knows about.
Yeah.
And eventually, everyone else has to discover to try to discover the secret.
Yeah. That sounds like a really good show, actually. I wouldn't mind watching that show.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't mind watching this one either.
Yeah.
So on the this guy Joel.
Yeah.
His secret was that he is the son of the Lisbon Ripper.
Okay.
This was in 2011. This information aroused the
well, I think the police have to come take a look now.
Police's suspicions.
They got to take it. He's talking mad shit.
Before his arrest, José Guedes confessed details of the murders to the online edition of the Sol newspaper, which translates to the Sun.
Hey, who likes the Sun?
The Sun newspaper Sol newspaper. And yeah, I guess that's how he was found.
It's obviously the reason they haven't put anything on there is because it's still being investigated, but...
it must be. I don't know. Well, it says that he confessed details of the murders.
But whether or not that means he did it.
Well, yeah.
Wow. All right.
But yeah.
Late breaking news. Big Brother catches another criminal.
Well, secret story.
Outrageous. All right. This is truly the end this time.
Okay.
Bye-bye.